What's good, agents? Welcome to the 8th episode of the TCG Core podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a wide range of things, starting out with Dragon Ball Super, because myself, Dan, and Symbiode, who is on Namek right now, and our Jiren specialist, who placed third at Nashville. Was it Not Nashville.
Greenville.
Greenville. Same thing, obviously. With Syn Xeno, gross. And then 10th place in Kissimme this past weekend with Jiren. So he'll be joining us today. We'll start off with the Dragon Ball stuff, and then we'll move into Digimon, and I think we might have some Arcana stuff as well, since the new set comes out the same weekend as Digimon, which is gonna be weird and painful for a lot of people's wallets. Rick or Symbiode, do you want to start just by introducing yourself and letting everybody know, how you dominate the world with Jiren and other decks?
Sure, yeah. I'm Rick or Symbiode. I've been playing Dragon Ball Super for a year now. I think it started last October. I've just been picking it up, and more recently, I've been seeing some success with some basically random decks, trying to play off meta stuff. And very recently, with Syn Xeno and then with Jiren, it's been a good time.
Yeah, so I met, specifically I had met Symbiode during one of the regionals where I was playing Bardock. It was before I was any good at the game. And so pretty much me, Dan, and Symbiode play Dragon Ball almost every night. So if you're in the Discord and you're looking for people to play, ping us, and we will be there probably running games in some part of the Discord. Just let me know that you want to play. So I kind of wanted to just do like a brief overview of everybody's tournament experience. Because specifically for Dan, it was your first regional in a minute, period, right?
Yeah. So I've only ever done one in-person regional before, which was back in 2019. It was a Pokemon regional. Significant size at the time. It was close to 500 people. It was, it was a really fun experience. The whole, pandemic thing happened, shut everything down, and then from there it's just been all online. I did an online Digimon regional, which did not go well. But then, like Agent was saying, between me, Symbiode, and him, we were fortunate enough to get the plan together to go to Kissimme and do the regional there. And the nerves were kind of there because it had been that long, but I'd actually never played an official Dragon Ball event at all. Not a local, not a anything. So this regional was going to be my first official event outside of just playing casual games. So but I gotta say, overall, it was a fun experience. I think the event, they said had just over 100 people or something like that.
108, I think it was, yeah, or 107.
Yeah. So it was a pretty good size. I do think that the flow of the rounds and everything went pretty smoothly. Obviously there's some other stuff that we'll delve into as we talk about it. But for my personal experience, at the event, it was great. I felt like I did as good as I was hoping to do. So I ended up 4-3, which put me at 38th out of 107 for my first event. So I couldn't be too upset. And I don't want to be one of those guys I never played the deck before. But technically, the deck choice that I made, I ended up going with Bardock. We had literally just got 2 or 3 games in the night before for me to make that decision, because I was full on going to go Blue Gohan. Thank goodness I decided not to, and we went with Bardock. It was a much safer choice. But yeah, everybody there was really cool. People the more experienced players kind of coached me through some things. So yeah, it was a lot of good time. And I got to say, my most the thing that I was most excited about, honestly, was being able to spend the weekend with you guys. I think that was what kind of brought the whole experience together, and that's kind of what going to these IRL events, aside from the competition, is all about. So yeah, I had a blast. It was a great time.
Nice. I know this isn't, necessarily Dragon Ball related, but probably have you been to any physical regionals? Because I know where you are, for Digimon in particular, and kind of what was that like for you, in terms of going to physical events in Canada? Because I know that's kind of hard.
So it's funny you say that, because I've been to 2 in Canada and I've been to 1 in America, because it's just easier sometimes. There are states that are below me that are not that far away, a 3-hour drive, and I can get there in the day, do the tournament, and go back. So I've done 1 in Ohio, and I've done 2 in Toronto. And the ones in Toronto were really enjoyable, especially because both times, you guys are experiencing, you have people with you. So for the first time, you're I'm not just sitting here, waiting by myself. And my first regional, I went like 0-3 and just got TKO'd my very first one. Like, awful. The second one I've done, that was 26th. And that was like probably my best showing ever. But that was the year also where, as opposed to year one where like everyone won their first round in their pod except for me, where I was like, really? Like, that's, oh man, brutal. And then for the next year, for no one to win within like their first two and then be like the only one standing for like 5 in a row, where I'm like, do I stop? Do I just take my prize ring? Everyone else has left me. So like, I mean, I get it. I think it adds like a different spice to the game. The ones I've attended, super good, super well run. Shout out to who's the one who does that one every year? Oh my god, they're out of Ottawa.
Is it Carta Magica?
That's Carta Magica. Like the only one like showing up for events in like quite a few of these Bandai games. Like I really wish more would do it, but like I super appreciate how good they've been every year with keeping rounds on track and doing stuff.
Nice. Actually, I can't believe I haven't asked you this yet, Symbiode. How did this regional compare to the one that you did in Greenville? Like,
I'd say they're similarly well run. The Greenville one, and that MomoCon was on point as far as, because I've been to 4 in-person ones this year. There's the MomoCon one, the Greenville, the Kissimme, and then I went all the way up to Wisconsin. And I'm trying to remember which places ran each event, because I know Pro Play was one in Kissimme. I don't know who did it in Greenville, the other two. Could have been any of them that are around here, but they're all pretty decent. The worst part, I gladly give us lunch break at Kissimme. We did not get a lunch break at MomoCon. We got a small lunch break at Greenville, but enough to get food. At least they had like a vendor there that would sell food. That's always the hardest part, when they just do all day, no food, no drink, back-to-back rounds. It was a little nicer this one.
Yeah, I will say, when they said we get a lunch break, I was like, excuse me?
Heck yeah.
Like, yes, thank God.
Yes.
Because I feel
and
like
enough of one to actually get something.
Yeah, because like an hour, I was like, what? Hurry up and finish this game so we can go get food. I feel bad for anybody whose deck was like, I'm just gonna take my time and we're gonna run the full gamut. But yeah, it was interesting for me as well, making that trip from LA all the way out to Florida. And honest to God, if it wasn't for hanging out with y'all, I wouldn't have done it. To be completely honest, that was, to your point, Dan, I think that was the best part. And also being able to just run games of Dragon Ball in person. I think it was the first time since 2000 and what was it? I guess it would be 2021 since I played Dragon Ball in person. There was a shop that I had started trying to play, and it was just too clicky for me, so I just kind of dipped. But they used to do like pre-releases, and I would go and play terribly and lose every game and really just go to get cards. But I was complete shit at the game at the time. So yeah, it was really interesting to kind of be in a room full of other like nerds playing Dragon Ball, which I think is just a different vibe. And maybe Dan, you'll have a similar sense. It was different than when we played Digimon. I can't really tell you why. I would just say that the community for Dragon Ball and Digimon just feels slightly different in various events. I think because like the game feels so much more like I'm in control as like a pilot, as a player. Like I'm not as upset when I lose, which I think we've talked about in the past, but like I feel like I'm actually playing and that like I can focus on the game, and that like afterwards there's less salt to be had and more like, hey, what did you do? Like, why did you misplay there? Or like, what made you make that decision? That I feel like that conversation came up in almost all of my games. When in Digimon events, it like never comes up unless it's like with you guys, which is just an interesting, I think, change in game.
Yeah. To your point, like that's being. I mean, I've been playing Dragon Ball since late March, early April now. So I mean, a fair amount of time. But as far as this being my first ever event and actually being around, like, I mean, yeah, I talk with you guys all the time, but like just a wider pool of experienced players. That again, most of them were very accommodating on being like, hey, just so you know, like when you were doing this or it's like in Digimon, for the most part, it's just kind of like, yeah, I swung into your security there and didn't hit anything. It's like, what could I have done there? Nothing. Had better security. So it's like with Dragon Ball, it's like it was for me anyways. My experience was, it's like, yeah, when you played this, you might have been able to do that. And I know, like perfect example, like the night before when we were testing or whatever, Symbiote sitting right next to me across from you, and you guys were like, we had one point where like the hand was on the table and just kind of going through stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you're so much more in control of the game that you can make those, decisions and like modifications to like your gameplay. So yeah, for me, it just provided for more of an interactive experience, which made me feel like more part of the event rather than just like I showed up, I played, I got lucky, I got donked, and I left. You know what I mean? So it was more enjoyable. So yeah, I'm definitely open to going to more like Dragon Ball events, regardless of like placement, whatever, just because like the vibes, the experience for me was really positive.
Yeah, I've noticed that too with other regions I've been to. Everyone's always very open with information. After the game, I usually chat with my opponents about how it went, decisions that were made. I love asking them what cards they decided into. That's a fun thing to share after the game, so you just kind of know. I guess if you play like in the future, what cards to put in there, and if you see that deck in the tournament, well, what cards to think about that the people might pull into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For you, Rick, and your run with Jiren, I imagine like a lot of people are like, "What the hell am I even supposed to do?" Like, what were some of the? I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit at the regional. What were some of those rounds like for you?
Most of the rounds, around turn 2 or 3, my board was huge, and my opponents were just kind of not quite sure how it got to that point so fast. No, just yeah. I mean, what can you say when you have like a dozen cards on the board and they're trying to figure out which card to pick to remove when they have 2 pieces of removal? It's it's just overwhelming.
Yeah. I've said this like offline to Symbiode all the time, but honest to God, guys, like I feel like he is the best Jiren player I've ever encountered, because every single Jiren deck I've played until then, it's like a wash. It's like no conversation. It's very easy. That sounds bad, but like it's just like cool. Like this isn't an issue. But I feel like with this game in particular, especially at this regional and like getting out of our bubble, really realizing like I feel like all 3 of us, but specifically me and Dan, because it's our like first event, became exponentially more confident in like how we play. Because the amount of times I've had people tell me like, oh, like I feel like you're the best Bardic player I've played either here or in general, whatever. It was like a nice like ego boost for 1, but 2 to also feel like, oh crap, like I really do know how to play this game, and like I'm not just good with my friends, like I can actually perform when playing. I hadn't mentioned this before, but I placed 19th in the event, which was frustrating. I shouldn't complain about 19th, but because it's literally the exact same placing I got in the regional the week before. And me and Symbiode had the same record. The first opponent I had beat me and then basically dipped. They lost their next 2 games and then they left. And so I was basically screwed from that point on. I had to win out and I lost my last round, partially due to dumb decisions, because I hadn't really tested against Pan, and the fact that they were just neg everything 20k every turn was painful. It was very painful.
Yeah, Pan with the new support is rough.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys notice this either, but like as much as I enjoy webcamming, playing games with you guys, and like feeling like I've played a variety more stuff I wouldn't have experienced in my locals. There is something to be said about being in person and being able to touch cards and like look at cards and ask and be in a conversation, where I agree with all of you. I wonder if you guys would agree with this, rather, that like you just feel more confident because you're there and you're present. Whereas like this still kind of feels like a layer between us or something like that, right? Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because so our event in Kissimme was on Saturday. The guys flew, came in late Thursday. We had Friday and stuff, and Symbiode and I actually popped into like a little locals and like ran some games, and like that was the first time that weekend that I had run like actual physical games. And I can't tell you how many times like I'm shuffling and I auto cut like my own deck, and I just go and I'm like, oh, I have to think like, so yeah, to your point, it's like things like that. But then once we got into the habit of doing it, and even if regardless of what deck he was playing, if it was a deck I knew, a deck I didn't know, like I could pick up a card and be like, oh, okay, that does that, and I could, so it's like on top of me feeling in control of my own gameplay, I felt more in control of my situation, because like there's more interactivity in your game state, which is the intention, right? Because like you're actually playing with somebody. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Frawley. I love that. Like again, I'm more apt to do these events because of that fact of being able to actually interact with my opponent like in person. It was great.
Yeah, without webcam games, I wouldn't be playing Dragon Ball just because that's the what I can play the most. But there is a huge difference between doing a webcam regional and an in-person regional. Just the amount of information you have available to you. You could ask your opponent what the card does, and you'll get like a Cliff Notes version, and you just have to work with that and try to remember it. Whereas if it's across from you, you can look at the card, and then next turn be like, wait, there was one. What was that keyword again? Take a peek at it, and not have to worry about asking your opponent, the same information 3 times and just feeling silly about it.
To add on to that point, you just made me think of something else too. In so many games, right? You look at like what is public information, like for like your opponent, right? One of the big things being your discard, drop, graveyard, whatever it is, in whatever game. When you're across, most people are probably deterred from being like, okay, can you tell, like, especially when the game goes on, they've got 20 some cards in there. Can you tell me all the cards? And they're not going to sit there and go through every one of them, right? So you as the player are probably not even going to ask that question. You might ask like, hey, how many of this specific card that you have in there versus like, again, like when Symbiode and I are playing against each other, and I'm like, okay, I want to see, and I can, you say, hey, can I take a look at your drop or whatever? I pick it up and I'm like looking through it. Okay, now I am in control of that information. So yeah, just things like that, being able to like navigate the game with, just cleaner, not just necessarily more, but just cleaner information. Like Symbiode was saying, it's like, I don't need to get an abbreviated version of what the card does. I can make my own interpretation from like my read through of the text. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, echo 100% everything you guys are saying. Like, I think it's just a better experience overall too. Like you get a sense of just kind of like, there's that eye contact of like getting into your opponent's head, knowing what they're thinking, kind of figuring out like what they're doing. Like it just adds like an extra layer on top of the game, which I really enjoy, especially for something like Dragon Ball. I think the same is true for Digimon. When I did the in-person regional, I did for that a couple years ago now, but it's just like different. And I feel like you can perform better in person than online just because like you're there and you're not as worried about, oh my god, this person's setup is trash, I can't see anything, or like, oh my goodness, what about my setup? Like there's no technical limitations, it's just the game. And I think that really helps. Because I can't tell you how many times Discord has either died on me or my internet has died in an event, and you're like, well, I'm just screwed. Like I just have to kind of accept it is what it is. And that won't happen in person, so that's ideal.
Well, and even like to touch on our topic from last week about like everything having a digital client, there's something about knowing that, a move that was illegal that couldn't have been made didn't get made, or knowing that like everything was like truly left up to RNG. There is a certain level of like disconnect where I'm like, I want to trust my opponent. I've had great people. I have not ever felt in any way cheated in a match, thankfully. But I think it can be easy for some people to be like, I have no idea about that one round. I don't know.
Yeah,
you want to call that? You want to call that a segue or?
Am I wrong?
He threw it up there.
Am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, along those lines, I've never felt cheated at a webcam event, but I've played so many, I am sure people have cheated against me, and there's just no way to know.
Yeah.
It's disquieting to like have that information. Like you want to believe the best in everybody, right? Like I'd like to, or give everyone the benefit of the doubt, worst case.
Yeah. I know in Digimon, when I've gone back and watched some old stuff, I've noticed him like, oh, that's suspicious. I won anyway because the Digimon's RNG didn't give a damn about what they did. But like, there were times like, no, that effect doesn't do what you said it did. Like I looked at it, that is inaccurate, and I know that wasn't right because I asked you and you read the card to me incorrectly, but you read the card. So there's, and obviously that happens in Dragon Ball all the time because Dragon Ball players don't read. And we don't read, they don't watch their own show, they don't, whatever. But and to segue from into, God, I don't even know really where to start with this past regional. I don't even really want to get into the #1 slot and like soft cheating, like the person, like I don't even want to. There's too much around that now that it's like, all right, y'all have that to yourselves. But I think we can talk about favoritism in judging and things that need to change for in-person events. My first question, and this is not entirely rhetorical, but do y'all think it makes sense that if you are a TO that you can sponsor players and have them play in your own event, that seems something about that don't seem right. I don't know. I put that to y'all if like maybe there's something I'm not thinking about there, but that just seems a little. And then that one of your players wins, like it just seems, I don't know. It seems a little odd for that to be like a thing that can like happen. I don't know.
I feel like
Go ahead.
Oh.
No, of course, my friend.
Yeah, if you were sponsoring a team and there's a monetary incentive for that you're giving them, and then there's pricing involved in your event, and they are receiving certain favoritism perks while getting that pricing, definitely conflict of interest there.
Yeah, I think conflict of interest is exactly what I was going to say. Where though I could not say it there, where like. I get it. Like participating in any other event where like you're not there, it's easier to be like, cool, like you are free and legal. It's like why you can't bet in a casino if you work in a casino. Like even if you do win legitimately, stuff looks weird, or could look strange to some. I'll preface my statement with going with I have probably the least amount of information about what happened at this regional, not going myself. But I've had some, thankfully, like positively, I've had experiences with judges where like I played against an opponent who was talking with their judge, clearly being friends, and being like, oh God, like now I'm worried about something. And then I had the judge entirely have my back when his friend called him over to be like, hey, what about this? And he's like, oh yeah, no, I know that deck totally works like that. And I'm like, thank you, judge. Cool. I appreciate your, like at lower levels, I think it's easier to be like friends with people and still like be, like rules are rules are rules. I feel like the higher up you go in anything, there can be things that sway people in certain respects, or maybe cause you to turn a little bit more of a blind eye.
Yeah, I'm with Agent on this. I won't. Yeah, there's so much stuff surrounding the specific scenario that like I'll be objective and I'll use this as like the comparison, right? I grew up in a world of sports, right? And then we just recently got done. My daughter just got done playing her first season of high school varsity sports, so very competitive. Rulings and refs and all that kind of stuff makes a really big difference, right? And we ran into two scenarios where the refs were and like the judges that like they in the sports that she plays, like there's like multiple refs, like we'll call out of bounds and things like that were parents of the home team. So it's situations like that. If you want to make that type of comparison, like Farley was saying, it's like for us as the visiting team coming in there, knowing that these parents are, I mean, you would assume like if it were us, like you're rooting for that team to win. What are you going to do? You're going to make those kind of, you would assume those kind of suspect type of rulings or things like that to just kind of push them over the edge. And as we all know, whether it's sports, card games, anything that has any type of officiating, those little like ruling, like those kind of things do make a big difference in the long run. Something as simple as like, oh, I thought this card did this well. This interpretation can make it da da da, and it could literally change the entire like game state, right? So it's one of those where it's like, do you want to then just like say, oh, well, now you can't participate in the event because you're such and such and da da da? Well, then it's not fair to the player. It's like, but you kind of know that going into it, knowing that you're sponsored by that team. So I do think that it's a gray area, but I think at the end of the day, just to, like you guys said, to remove that completely conflict of interest, there needs to be clear set boundaries to say yay or nay on this. And if so, then maybe you need to work on getting impartial judges, regardless of who is actually running the event. So
with any kind of hobby that's, it's always a niche. If you're playing the hobby, you're usually going to be the people that play the hobby, the people that know the rules that are going to become judges. They're going to go to the events that are near them, that are going to judge for the events to them. And that's, everyone knows each other nearby. So it's hard to not have people that are friends of judges when they're there. And I will say, I haven't seen any like suspect judge calls as far as actual rules go. It's more consequences of making mistakes is where really the gray areas come in.
Well, I mean, I think so. The specific example from ours, if you're in our Discord server, you already know but like we had like a 3v3 tournament, and we were mowing down teams. Okay, we were. If any of y'all are watching, I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean like we had a good run. We were 2-0. Then we got the down pair for whatever reason. I mean that just happens. It's the roll of the die. I'm gonna choose to believe that, and it is what it is. And for people who don't know, Digimon is about to get the 3v3s like literally tomorrow. What is that, November 12th? They're going to be doing that at the Pasadena event, which is really cool. I wish I had some friends over here because I would probably do that instead of the Dragon Ball Regional, but that's neither here nor there. Essentially, you know, you sit in a row of three, and the person in the middle can like communicate for about allegedly 30 seconds with either person on their side, and just kind of like, I guess they call it like light coaching, basically saying,
yeah, I will say it's not even that you get 30 seconds to talk to them. It's that you have 30 seconds for every play you're making is like, or you're slow playing, and you just have to make sure your plays stay within that while taking advice. So it's not even like you just chat for 30 seconds to do something. It's like, hey, I have to make plays on pace, and you can get input, but you still have to maintain pace of play.
Yep.
Right. And so, you know, we were pretty much doing that. All three of us like know each other well enough. Like, we don't really feel the need to do that too often, I think. It was kind of like, hey, don't forget this. Hey, don't forget that. Like, I didn't have to say shit to Symbiode. Like, he was fine. Like, I didn't have to say literally anything to him.
Yeah.
And then, like, Dan was playing a new deck that he had just built, basically. He knew how to play it, but had just built it, like, what, basically last night, that morning?
The night before. Yeah, the night before. The three cards that I was waiting on came in, like, that night. Put it together and said, we're shipping this, so...
Yep. So again, first two games go well. Then in the last game, we're playing a team of three, two folks who know each other, one person who's like was a pickup. And at the end of the game, person in the middle basically started playing the cards for their teammate on their left, the person that Dan was playing. And we sat there for like a good couple minutes just confused as to what was happening, because there was a bunch of people like watching this game happen, and then there was like the judge who was just kind of there, like, just like, oh, this is fine. And it was just like the most awkward couple of minutes. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, because he's literally picking the cards out of his teammate's hand and play this, shuffling his deck for him. It was like the most, Twilight Zone moment I've ever had, like in a card game scenario where you felt like you were in like a card shop situation where it was like a bunch of buddies playing and you were kind of like the visiting team. And I was like, I don't really understand why this is happening. And I also don't know. Now, for additional context, the person that Dan was playing, they'd only been playing the game for like 10 days. So it was also hard to not like shut that shit down, feeling like, I mean, yeah, they're a noob, but like at the same time, like you can't play the game for your teammate. I don't think that's how that's supposed to work. And we went into overtime, and they kept going, and like they were like, well, this is the last attack, even though overtime had been like called before the swing happened. So we ultimately ended up losing and going from what would have been second place down to fifth, and losing out on like a couple $100 at
easily, yeah,
of pricing. And it I will say that was probably like the worst experience I've ever had in an in-person game. It reminded me of like the Yu-Gi-Oh days, but for very different reasons, of like just feeling like absolute shit after an event. And if it had happened without being with them, I probably would be like, fuck this game for a couple months, to be honest, because it was just a terrible experience. And just kind of like the conversation around like soft cheating and like just the boys club type of stuff, like it was just really weird. It was just a weird experience. And I don't know if you guys have like a different take on kind of like how other people, because I'm sure that this is not something that's gonna be exclusive to us. I'm sure this is something that's probably going to happen to other people or has happened to them. Like, rather than focusing on that this is bullshit, I do want to give you all the floor to obviously acknowledge that this is bullshit. But like, how can people between like people who are at these events just fucking do better without feeling like a dick? Because I think that's where we were. We were at a point where we felt like if we said something, we'd be a dick about it. But like at the same time, in hindsight, it's like, no, we probably should have just like said something and just let them do with that what they were gonna do with it.
Yeah, so I'll take that one, right? So going off of it, I felt very confident because it was, with it being my game and like feeling very confident going through the whole thing and knowing that I had this guy pretty much like, and again, to your point, it's like, yeah, he was only 10 days new. He was a pickup or whatever. I can feel whatever type of way. Oh, I beat a newbie, whatever. There was serious prizing on the line. We're an official event, right? This is an actual official, like, it's sanctioned by by Bandai, whatever, right? There's actual like, so I was like, okay, and in my mind, and we do this all the time, I have my like casual gameplay mindset of like, it's okay, yeah, you can take it back, no big deal, because I don't play in a lot of these like official events. In this one, the only thing I'll say, and I'll put a little bit of the blame on me, and it was just because I was caught up in the moment of doing it that I didn't think about it till afterwards. It happens all the time. Is I should have said something and been like, I have every right to say I don't agree with what's currently occurring here in these last couple turns, and turn to the judge, because then at that point I put the ball in his court and say, now you do something, and if you don't, then I can escalate it, right? Or if you give me a ruling that's like, oh no, this is allowed, and I can, whether it's referred to the rules or like I said, escalate it or whatever, to like challenge that, then it's like, okay, now we have an issue. But because I didn't do that, and because both players are supposed to keep game state, and you're supposed to whatever, I can assume some of that fault on my end. But to that point, it's also like you see the TO standing right here, watching all this occur. You have to wonder, like, do they not have the? Because I don't know. I'm not a TO. I don't know. You guys might have better like expertise on this. It's like, are they not allowed to intervene unless requested? You know what I mean? So,
as far as I'm aware, they could just step in where they feel like the TO. Whether they know or they feel like doing that, if they're if things are kind of, I guess, because it wasn't. I mean, the ruling on the coaching and stuff is very loose there. That sort of thing. It's not very strictly defined, so it's not like, hey, they made a mistake, the TO can step in and say you did this wrong. It's more like the situation is a little weird, but do it, as a TO, would I have to step in for that or not? I mean, the players are kind of dealing with it. They might feel like, they might not feel like they need to do anything.
Yeah, I felt like if it was that big of a deal, then somebody would have spoke up and said something. I think for me, the two things that got me were number one, when we first got there and we were registering, and again, I understand, we didn't know whatever, but it was drilled into us. It's like, this is how this works. This is how da-da-da. So I took it very seriously. Like, okay, because I've never done one of these before. So that was my first experience with it. I'm thinking, all right, I can look over and be like, hey, should I play this? And your guys are like, yeah, do that one. Boom, I'm playing it. Right. Like, that's basically the extent of what I thought. And towards I was the second to last turn or third to last turn, towards the end of the game, that's kind of how this whole scenario was playing out, where their player in the middle was kind of doing that with them. There'd be one instance where he would take the card and be like, do this and whatever. But the last two turns of the game, and I'm glad that they got it on stream because you can actually watch this back and actually see it, is at one point he literally takes the guy's hand from him, starts going through it. He's shuffling the deck. He's playing cards down. He's looking through his Z deck. I'm like, at this point, you're not just pointing and telling him. You're playing his feel for him. So now I'm not actually playing player C. I'm playing player B. And from my perspective, that is not how that's supposed to work, because they were, player B plays player B, and you can't switch spots. So I'm thinking basically that's just what happened. Without physically moving seats, they basically swap spots. So that's what kind of got me about the whole scenario.
It sounds like opposite Pacific Rim, where instead of two minds are working together to fire a giant robot, this guy was like, I'm good enough that I can play my deck, and if this dude struggles, I can also just play his deck.
Oh, for context, I will say this. Say this. Sorry. So, well, just because this will no, because you bring me up a good point. So just for context, Symbiode had already won his game. Okay, so they were already down one. Agent had lost his to this player here. So I needed to win mine. They needed to win theirs in order to win this, because you have to go 2-1 to win. This guy, knowing this guy's 10 days in, did not have, and this is presumptuous, but thinking as an experienced player, he's thinking, oh crap, I need to do something, because I cannot just leave it up to him, because, I can see, and I am playing a pretty strong deck. I'm doing pretty well. This guy's kind of fumbling through his plays. He'd already made a few misplays. So he went into panic mode. And you could tell the way that he was going through that. So that's what I was going to say, Farley, for context, just so you know, that's the situation we were already in. This was a do or die game for both of us.
No, that makes sense. And back to your point, feeling like you don't want to call a TO. I totally get that. But the best thing I was taught, especially from like other judges, was like, even just asking a TO, although you feel like you're putting all the onus of like a ref call, right? The best part about any judge is they have head judges. Like there's always one dude who has the be all end all. So even if you put this in the guy's court and you have the option of escalating, like you were saying, like sometimes that dude doesn't know what to do either, because there's a certain level of judging where like I feel like you understand all the rules and all the mechanics and how everything functions, and like what is and isn't allowed sometimes. Like, and that sounds very black and white, and that's not what I'm trying to paint it as. But like, there's etiquette and like how things are done, and some people take things way differently than others. So like, at least giving it to the head judge, sometimes putting a second set of eyes on it is the best thing you can do, because someone else will also go, hey, there is a problem here. Or like, if they double down on there isn't a problem here, you know where you're stuck at. Like, the second the head judge says anything, I'm like, thank you. Like, if bad or good. Sometimes you're just like, cool. Well, either I keep existing or I bail now.
You don't argue with the head judge, but you know, I mean, he might not always be right, but it's his word is law, so you just have to accept it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like going back to like the whole like the comparison to like the whole sports thing, right? Like refs are going to make calls that you don't agree with and all that. And it's like, look, I may not agree with them, like Symbiode was saying, but at the end of the day, it's like, at least I got a ruling because I solicited the question. In this case, I kind of feel like I could have done more to have been like, hey, and I could have come at it from a completely ignorant point of view. This is my first ever 3v3 and be like, hey, look, I didn't, is this much like interaction allowed between the teams? Because if so, I would have just turned to Adrian and been like, here, what am I supposed to, because he's the more experienced player than me. You know what I mean? Like, no, all jokes aside, like it would have been like that similar to that. And then now because he's sitting next to Symbiode, he can consult with him. So it was that whole thing of like, I didn't realize how that interaction was supposed to work, because that's really all I was doing. I was kind of, turn to turn, just kind of turn to them, kind of give them an eye. They'd be like, nah, and just kind of like nudge that and cool, there we go. So yeah, I think for me, it's like going forward in the future, like I just need to become more comfortable with being able to ask those questions. This is just a side note, but the kicker of it all is, had I asked during that time before the whole like last turn or whatever for a judge question, there had been any type of lengthy conversation, we would have been fine, because it wouldn't have went to like the time would have been called before they even got to the turn. So
yeah,
just
we
kind
got
of
like
a funny
5-10 seconds. Yeah,
that's all it would have needed. So yeah, there's just another. But yeah, that's basically what had happened over our 3v3 experience. I will say this for me, I don't want to speak for you guys, I still had a blast, because afterwards I was thinking about it. I'm like, I had a great time at the regional, but every single round we were all so spread out, right? Because there was tons of tables and all that. It was great that even though it was only 3 rounds, like we got to like move like all together, and I got to like actually play games with you guys side by side. So I'll advocate for 3v3s regardless of judge calls and other players or whatever, just because they're a fun event. Like Agent was saying, like Digimon starting to do them now. Those they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. My mind is blown by that experience. Like, not like the last part is what it is, but like everything up until then, I mean, that was really cool, and it's a really cool premise, because like it seems like it's also a really great way to take newer players and teach them how to play their decks in a like a safe but competitive environment. Like that was actually like a really cool kind of like way to do it. And again, I think for the 3 of us, it helps that we play so much that like that's why, like, again, yes, you're playing a new deck. I was like, I don't have to be up Dan's ass about do this, do that. What if I'm like, no, you know what the hell to do. So like, yeah, that was really cool. And I think when Digimon does it, I think that's going to be insanely interesting, because there's so much more to remind your opponent about, like, hey, security, da-da-da-da. I think that will make the RNG feel not as bad, because now it's like a brain trust that can like recall what you can hit out of security and why you shouldn't do something. Because I feel like with Digimon, there's a lot of like why you should or shouldn'ts than there compared to Dragon Ball. You don't get to test the field and shit and see like, how does this work? Is it going to be good? Like watching you play, Rick, and like you explained to Dan when we would play in the hotel room of like, hey, do all your stuff on board first, then play cards. I've never thought of it like that. So that helped me a lot, like, going forward of like, oh yeah, duh. Because in Digimon, like, that doesn't really happen. Like, you kind of go, let me do everything first, then start swinging. Because if I don't, the thing I need's probably gonna die. And it's gonna ruin everything. So I might as well like make the play set up now and then go. Because I'm not gonna probably be able to fix it if I don't. It's just a different mentality.
Yeah, there's really two factors for it. The first factor is you could see what they're going to do. If they're going to do a negate, if they're going to floodgate, I mean, your first swing, they're probably going to flood you right there because otherwise it's less efficient. Secondly, the more you can do before spending any energy, they have to think about like 20 different things that you could do with that energy before making any plays. Whereas if you have all your stuff on board and show, they can make like the perfect decision because they have all the information.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was our experience, and I think for anybody like with these sorts of things, like I was said, to kind of put a positive spin on it or whatever, ask questions. Do not hesitate to ask questions, because I feel like, will shoot yourself in the foot more often than not. Doesn't hurt to ask, especially in person. I understand online regionals, like asking questions and stuff is a pain because you gotta like, it's just so much more involved where you might just kind of say F it, but definitely in person, the judge is right there. Like, take advantage of that.
No,
Yeah,
I
there's a
definitely,
lot of-
I can't stress that enough. Of like, put your hand up, call judge. You could say it at locals, you can say it at regionals, like anything. Especially like, I have more social anxiety pinging a judge than I do just being like, someone help me, like please, is this guy right? Just question. Yep. No. Okay. Cool. And you're on with your thing. At least like I said, like getting an answer or like at least having someone put a foot down on something, you know where you stand after that.
Yeah, I think the main issue is that judge calls, getting a third party involved has gotten a stigma placed on it so heavily that it's negative, or that you're trying to rule shark, or that you're trying to like call your opponent a liar or whatever. It's like, look, I think you just use your best judgment of like, okay, if I play a card that is a very simple interaction, has a very clear what it does, you don't need a ruling on it. It's very clear what that card does. When it gets complicated of like effect timing, or especially we play Dragon Ball and it's like, you do this, I counter that, I got that, in those type of things, absolutely, especially because you want to make sure that you sequence correctly and all of those kind of things. So yeah, I think it just being comfortable to say, look, I don't want to call somebody over here and sound any type of way, but I also want to make the most optimal play, and I can't do that unless I know that whatever. So it's like you just have to get comfortable with being able to do that. So.
And there's an extra layer with ours too, because it was a player's behavior that we were calling a judge for. So then you're pointing out that player's behavior, and it feels like you're judging how they're behaving, which that's never feels good to do. You don't want to judge people on how they act, but it crossed the line. It's like partway through our game, it crossed the line at some point, and I think we just missed the point it crossed the line, the opportunity to say something.
Yeah, 100%. And to your point too, Symbiode, it wasn't even about the actual game at that point, right? It was like,
exactly, yeah.
Can they do that? Like it felt much more argumentative, I think, in nature compared to, hey, I'm not really understanding this play. Yeah.
So just things to take forward in the future. So
yeah.
Oh, I could write a book on the amount of misplays I've had by having all the information and being able to ask any question and still messing up by swinging or doing something I should not have done. Knowing is not understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. Well, I think it might be time to transition out of Dragon Ball. I think this is the longest we've talked about Dragon Ball on the podcast. Dragon Ball's taken over a little bit.
You guys get one.
Yeah,
we get one.
We get one. So I'm gonna let Rick escape before we talk about Digimon shenanigans, because there's a lot there. But before then, is there anything you want to say, anybody want to say, about the regionals in general, or Rick, any closing remarks about dominating the world with Jiren, anything like that?
I mean, speaking of dominating with Jiren, I have no idea what deck I'm gonna be playing for the nationals, finals, whatever. I'm at a complete loss right now. Especially with the new set coming out, there is no major event between the new set release and the finals. So it's gonna be fun to figure out. We'll have to just do some testing and see what happens. But I mean, it's a fully open meta right now. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Cool. All right, then we're gonna let him escape. and we will change over scenes and be back in like, well, for y'all, it's gonna be instant. So yeah. So the Ultimate Cup for Digimon is basically rotation. Y'all know every time I call something out, I have to bring it up and take my props. All right. So I don't know if y'all remember. It might have been on the podcast. I know for damn sure it was on the stream. When we got block numbers, everyone was like, "Oh my god, the game's gonna have rotation. This is so great." Blah 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 blah. And I had repeatedly said, "No, you're not getting rotation. What's gonna happen is they're gonna do like a special event, which is what Dragon Ball did for like a season, and it didn't work out, so they stopped. Where you have specific cards that can be used within whatever that event. And now that time has come for Ultimate Cup. Do you guys have any initial thoughts, feelings, impressions? Do you care? Is this good or bad? What do you think?
I feel like I'm gonna be devil's advocate. I think it's good, and here's why: because of deck creativity, right? Obviously, we know in a quote unquote unlimited format where everything's legal, colors don't matter. Like you can bake whatever you want, right? There usually becomes like there becomes a meta, and decks kind of gravitate towards the top and whatever. Previous Ultimate Cup formats where it was monocolored then saw this kind of the same thing, and the longer that goes on, you see kind of the same decks, and then people are just like, I can't. I'm either gonna have to play these few or try to like whatever. So seeing something like this and like limiting a card pool is a cool way for them to be like, hey, we're gonna do rotation, but we're not gonna make it like the official format, so you guys don't have to worry about it. My only thing I'll say is this, and I don't think they'll ever do it because we talked about this. Bandai will just they won't. But what I'm worried is like this is always one of those like test the waters type of things. And be like, if this works out for them or they do like it or whatever, will they implement this in the standard format, quote unquote, of like just regular Digimon? I don't think so, but that'd be my only like caveat to it. But I think it's cool. I think you're gonna see cool deck ideas. You're gonna see different results. You're gonna see like maybe cards that were, I mean, I know the list is more recent, but you'll see things that you just normally wouldn't in a standard meta.
That's fair. No, I definitely feel like this serves two purposes. I think I agree with you, Dan, because at first I was gonna say like this felt unique. Like we have a game that involves colors. We are limiting you to your color. Do the best in your color, and sometimes limitations can cause like great innovation. That is not what's really been happening in Ultimate Cup, where like blue and green tend to do pretty much the same, like really well, like outperform. Like I feel like green does not see the meta it sees outside of Ultimate Cup, which speaks bounds about the colors, which is really interesting. But you're right, the right to splash and the right to be able to do other things that like are outside of your color and make tech choices, that truly is where you can see more innovation. Because I feel like this leads us down like a magic path of like modern decks change all the time, but like vintage decks don't really change. Like cards got to be really good to make an impression like all the way back there. And the other thing I think it fixes is North Americans like myself, like especially up in Canada, we've complained about like lack of events and stuff. And though Ultimate Cups for the most part have been online, there's an incentive to just do more events. Where they're like, cool, we're just trying to do more events. And we noticed that like I don't know what the numbers are like for Ultimate Cup, but I don't think they're as high as normal. I have no metrics. I have nothing to measure this by, unfortunately. And if I do, and I'm not utilizing a resource, please link it down below. I will click it. I'm always trying to learn more about how these things operate. But yeah, no, if you're seeing a lower amount of attendance and you just want to get more events out there for people, this is how you do it. And you also give them the caveat where it's like, well, hey, we're doing a little bit of Pokemon thing. These cards are what are good for these events. They're like all cards are good for regular events like regionals and stuff, but these cards are just good for these events. And if you want to participate or you are currently participating, it gives you more things to participate in.
I agree with everything you both said, but I also think too, I'm curious to see what this is going to do to the market for newer cards, because some of the stuff from Blast Ace is now going to be good for Ultimate Cup specifically, and it's going to be good in the general meta. So I also think this is a good way for them of increasing the cash flow, both in the third party, secondary market, and then in like for themselves, because now your cards have double purposes. So now you might be more inclined to say, all right, let me get 2 play sets of, I don't know, something that otherwise you might just need 1 or 2 cards of. And I'm really curious to see innovation wise. Now you really get to see what each set has to offer. Of course, I imagine going forward, because they're block numbers, like set 15 or EX5, and we'll get rolled into Ultimate Cup, and we'll kind of go in this cascading effect. But like EX5 isn't going to benefit from all the Weregar craziness that was before, or Metal Guard craziness that's before BT14. So yeah, like deck wise, I don't know. I'm really curious to see like what you're gonna build with the rookie pool that you have. Just looking at like 14, I guess like the safest thing is to start with the starter decks, right, and build off of those. Probably is like the safest pool to start with, maybe. Now I'm just waiting to see what the new prizing is gonna be, because we haven't seen that yet, right? I don't think. Because I imagine we're gonna get a new rotation of prizing. But I agree. I think it's a really good thing for the game. I think it makes it more enticing to actually play in Ulti Cups, because Dan, I feel like especially for you, you're like, I don't really want to do this because I don't want to really play with the color restriction.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I've been turned off of Ulti Cups for a while, and it's just not a, I don't really care too much for like the monocolored thing. I tried it, but the same thing, it's like I would see like 1 or 2 of the same decks, and like previous, I'll just like reference like Bloom Lord was like one of the best decks, right? Because it just was really good, and it wouldn't perform in a standard meta, but it did really good in Ultimate Cup. Red Hybrid kind of did the same thing. It's like, cool, those decks are fun or whatever, but it's like, if I'm gonna play in an 8, potentially 9 round Ultimate Cup, I don't want to see that 6 of them. With this, it's kind of like you might still have the same thing. I don't know, but I'm incentivized to try it out, right? Because you have such this, small card pool, as well as new things, right? Because like you said, it's the newer stuff, so people haven't really had a lot of time to really experiment with it. Sure, people are proxying and doing whatever playtest, but it's all new. So the cool thing is like everybody's still trying to figure it out. This isn't just be like same thing, like, oh, Ultimate Cup got announced, let me grab my Bloom Lord, let me grab my Blue Flare, and just like rock with it again. So yeah, I'll try it out. I mean, why not? I mean, like you said, because we haven't seen the prizing yet. Especially if the prizing is halfway worth it, go with that too. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for this one.
I hate to use this model because obviously card games were around before video games, but this does feel a little bit like a battle pass. You know what I mean? We're like, oh, you get additional awards, you can compete in additional things because you're investing in current card games. Like, because a lot of card games obviously want you to play like standard because it rotates and does stuff, and then like people fall into older categories where like that's just what you prefer. Especially Yu-Gi-Oh having so many alternative formats and things you can go back to. Where it's like, man, I really liked it pre-Pendulums. It's like, we have formats for you. Let me tell you, we do. So I do like that. I feel like Agumon has, okay, I get that everyone keeps saying like, it's the Agumon
game.
Yeah, for sure. But like Gabumon's gonna be the shit in Ultimate Cup come EX5, right? Like that's got to be way better, 100%. And I do like that they're including some of the other stuff they just hand you for Blast Days. I'm sure I want to take a segment later to talk about like everything you get in a box of Blast Days, just because I was so impressed with like, we're going into year 3 and we need new blood and we need people here, like, and at the same time, like, how do we get people here, and how do we return investment on people who have like bought shit from us? And this felt like one of the best ones. So like, there is an additional card pool. We have that Vmon starter deck you get with BT14 also available in this card pool. Also means that like the Tamer Party Pack, which has like Digimon and Tamers from like all different sets, it does open up some weird avenues. I don't know if it enables anything interesting. I just hope that Ultimate Cup doesn't feel like Meta 2.0, where like the only thing I will think I might miss about specifically monocolor Ultimate Cups is some of the experimentation you would do. Like, as someone who really thinks black decks are just waiting to pop off, like they're always one step away from being like number one. It wasn't until we got red that I feel like that was true. I don't know. There's something about building within limitations that feels interesting, and like it's going to create new blood, but it doesn't, or like not even new blood, but like new builds, but it doesn't always. Sometimes it can stagnate because something is just better.
Yeah, there's just so much that I'm like actually excited for now with Digimon, which is interesting because I've been like on my Dragon Ball like grind for a while, but now with Blast Ace, I'm like, okay, cool. I think I'll be able to find more of a balance between the two games, especially with like finals or whatever coming up, and all the games being under one roof. And yes, I do think when we get to talking about some of the stuff in Blast Ace, like I didn't realize how much stuff you're getting for buying a box. So I was watching, I can't remember who was doing an unboxing, but it might have been A Vault, but he was doing an unboxing. I was like, oh my god, this just stuff just keeps coming out of this box. That is not just the like the packs. So that was really cool.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, I'm kind of excited for. We were talking about it, that like pre-releases are happening this weekend. Like at the time this recorded, like pre-releases are happening and stuff. And I'm actually excited to like go to this one, to do this stuff. Regardless, we've kind of talked, you know, into the ground with like Blast Ace mechanic and all that, but like just like new stuff. Maybe that's really like superficial to say, but like it's cool that we like as card players, it's like, oh, there's, you know, especially because, you know, coming out of what we'd consider a lull for Digimon for the last couple months, right? That we have something new and exciting to look forward to. And I think this Ulti Cup format just kind of also perpetuates that and say, okay, not only we're going to give you like all of these new cards and like, you know, different promotional things, we're going to do this new Ulti Cup thing. And, you know, obviously Nats are pretty much at this point right around the corner. So it's like, there's a lot to kind of look forward to in that. That all kind of kick off with this. And then to top it all off, and something we haven't really mentioned is, yeah, EX5 is what, a month after that? Or was it 2 months now? Like January, right? January. So like a month and a half or something like that. So yeah, it's yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. And especially them launching into year 3. I think they really felt like we had to do something, because you got like you got a Gatomon promo card, which was gorgeous. The promo Gato. You got 2 pre-release packs if you bought at like a local shop. As well, you got a full 50 card playable deck. That deck had 5 exclusive cards. They're the movie promos. You got the Vmon, you got the Ukamon, you got Ukamon's Tamer and Grown Up Davis, and you got the Imperial Dramon Ace. You got 4 of them. What was really cool was they handed you a deck that you could just hand to a buddy. Like if you were already set, it was really easy to hand this thing off or like keep a couple promos for yourself. And it just feels like they're like, hey man, like we're into year 3, we're gonna do new stuff. Hopefully we get like more people into it. And then like you said with the boxes, you get your box topper, which is a foil baby. You get your promo pack that's like promos like 10 to 18, I think, with a bunch of unique, interesting text. Promos we're not supposed to have yet. We are supposed to have 2 rows of promos before these exist. So North America yet again gets to be in its own meta. Give me my Pulsemon Tamer. I really want my Pulsemon Tamer. We were supposed to get it like 40 cards before these ones. And finally you got the promo, that baby. Oh, and you got one of each training boost, which are going to partially replace memory boosts, partially not. As like it's good to run a mixture of both, so you can't get floodgated out of. So, and then as well as your box. Like I think it was a really cool one to be a part of, where I was like, man, like there's so much to hand out for this.
Yeah, the training boost, man. I was watching Dan's some of his tournament runs. I'm like, what the what did it do? Like, you know, I already knew what it did, but seeing it in action, I was like, oh my god, that just feels gross. And I see why Greymon X cannot be at 4, because no, that would just make Greymon decks unstoppable. But yeah, I think this is what we've been calling for a while with Digimon, is just kind of like what they're doing now with Blast Ace. So really looking forward to getting my hands on. I, of course, being extra, ordered a case. So when I saw the alt arts and, you know, Greymon and War Gray, I said, oh shit, my wallet, it's fine. It's fine. I'll cry about it later with all my alt art secret rares. So it's fine. I feel like Frawley's giving me that judging just head shake.
No, like, you know when you can like you see jealousy, you know when you have a moment like, oh man, I wish. Like, no, real talk.
No, I'm okay with it because all the yellow stuff he gets out of there, I know he don't want it, so it's just
I
coming
have
this
never
way.
wanted to build a yellow vaccine deck so much in my life,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
hate myself for being like, I'm like, I don't want to build this deck, and you're like, well, you run Kantoros Mom, which is yellow vaccine, and you run Pulse Mom, which is yellow vaccine, and now there's this whole Patamon thing with, yellow vaccine and searchable. Like, what? I don't even know what deck I'm building. I don't know
Yep.
what to do with it.
Yeah.
There's so much. There's never been so much option. Look, I'm just gonna default to Commandramon. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
But there's this part of me that I'm like, there's a yellow vaccine deck that's insane that if I could crack the code, I could get there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sorry, Dan, what were you gonna say?
Yeah.
No. I was just gonna echo his point. Like that. Like going back to what I was saying is like there's just so much new stuff to really like explore with all this and be like, I can touch this, I can go there, I can. And it's like, between this and again a month and a half into EX05, it's just like the format's just gonna, I feel like, just blow open. So, which I think in part, like rationalizing is probably why they did the Ultimate Cup rules the way that they did, so that it kind of does limit it down. It's like, let's not go too crazy because, perfect example, yellow vaccine deck would be insane in Ultimate Cup rules, like if it was still monocolored, right? Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a good idea for them to be like, no, yellow could still be okay, but you're only gonna have this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just kind of recanting on that, but yeah, it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see what level 6s people are gonna put for Blastace, because it's like you get half the tamers, right? Basically, like you get like it's not. My brain is like running through ideas of like what could you build and what would be optimal, what would be good, what would be fun, because you're kind of have like a mixture of like Digimon lines now, right? Because you can't even build like a full War Grand. That's not even possible. So yeah,
It was really weird to include the Vmon deck specifically, where it's like, cool, our set is 4th in the line of new arrivals if we count BT14, and then we got 15 or EX5 15, and then 16 where like all those guys are going to get a new line and all that jazz. So I hope it's wacky, but I do feel like it's gonna be like Greymon, Garurumon. And then from there, like, I don't know. I mean, purple was supposed to be the pop off, right? Purple was was the thing in Japan that just kept topping and just kept doing well. So I do it's weird to have spoilers come ahead of time, because sometimes you're like, oh, like I know what decks are going to be good, but it always does feel like, no, we're in our own meta, because Japan was like, that was crazy, we're not doing that, pivot.
Yeah, I guess actually this is something that I thought that I've just seen people posting about and talking about. Do y'all think the game should be aligned? Like, should Japan, and I don't know how they would catch them up. Well, I guess they could just do this 1.5 sets and shit like they did when the game first started. But do you think the game would be better off if Japan was aligned to the rest of the world, or the rest of the world was aligned to Japan, I guess? Or if we maintain this like random, we don't really know like what sets and random cards could come out in between, but we can see the future. Do you feel that's more beneficial to you, or do you feel that it baits you more? Because the amount of people who talk about, oh, this is gonna be the deck, and then this meta comes around and it's not the deck because it's just not. What are you guys' thoughts, if any?
Yeah, I think that conversation of like Japan meta versus US meta, or I guess rest of the world meta, we'll say, like, because Japan's kind of in their own little, because they get everything early, is like Japan meta is going to be so much more different than like the rest of the world, and how they meta game, right? Regardless of what card pool, like cards are available to them, when we get them, how we handle them, or whatever, they play the game so much differently. I feel like that when you look at like Japan meta, you can get an idea of like, oh, that deck's doing crazy over there, it's doing whatever. But then by the time it gets over here, again, different card pools and like how people, whatever, it may not be. So it's like, for me, it's like I pay attention to it just because like I'm not a good deck builder, so it's like it's cool to give me ideas. But when I'm like, I'm not gonna look at that and be like, oh, that thing's gonna smash over here, because they don't translate necessarily like exactly the same by the time they get over here. So in terms of like trying to catch, I don't think that's even remotely possible. I don't think, because then you'd have to do this like weird like half set releases like every like month kind of thing, and it would just be, I feel like at that point it would honestly turn people off from the game, because then it's one of those like too much is too much, to try to keep up with, and then the game just kind of like spirals, right? So I'm okay with like the release schedule, and it's kind of cool to some extent where it's like it kind of gives us like sneak peeks or previews of like things coming up. But yeah, to your point, it does bait you a little bit, right? Because like somebody was like, oh, like that deck's gonna be cool, and like you go out like, oh, I'm gonna go max rare everything and get it ahead of time, right? Or whatever. It's like, nah, you might want to hold up a little bit because it may not be. So that's where my mentality is at with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like market hype does play a little bit into some people's spending, where you're like, you can convince yourself that this is going to be number one. But I do feel like, I mean, in the idea of the perfect universe of like, no, like the cards come out at the exact same time and everything's legal everywhere, is cool. But we all live in the same experiment. What's weird about being North America is I have future information, but I do not know what is coming out when. So cards might not matter that matter later. But it's also, I feel like it's less broken. It almost feels like Japan gets a demo test. They're like, we're doing this, and all of a sudden someone's like, well, we're crushing, and it's like, oh my god, that's crazy. Because we've had pre-bans hit like North America before, like as cards release. We've had the second set, and then later on we had like the Beelzemon, which people called like an emergency ban because it was like, it had 3 months or something like that before like it really did lose a key piece. So it's weird because like sometimes I agree with it and sometimes I don't, and even if you want to talk about like investing ahead of time, even investing in Beelzemon at the time was a trick because ban lists are going to happen because if things are too good, things get hit. So it's always a gamble. I kind of prefer living in this weird future where like I know of things that I'm excited for, but getting the Rust Tyrannomon and the Diaboromon Ace means that those decks are so much more viable than they were when they actually came out in Japan. So we live in this weird future time period where it's like I don't think they have a perfect answer, obviously, for like balance or anything like that, but it creates enough of an interesting meta that we can still learn from what they're doing 100%, but it doesn't translate 1-to-1.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because like there are times where like I kind of wish the games were just aligned, just so that I'm not like, oh, BT14's here, but I'm already thinking about EX5 or BT15. Like that's the one thing that I absolutely hate, but I understand. Like Yu-Gi-Oh used to do it, right? Like Pokemon does too because Japan's sets are ahead, right? I don't know by how far, but
yeah.
Both correct.
Yep.
So it's like I understand, like that's just the nature of printing and like the games. Just I get like that's why that happens, but it can be just so frustrating when you're like, oh, the new set came out and I'm already thinking about the next set. Now, granted, I don't feel like I'm that bonded to EX05. I think it's gonna be cool, but like I'm not like laser focused like I feel like in previous sets where the new set would come out and I was already like, okay, I'm on the next thing. I'm already thinking ahead. I do like that our metas though, you never freaking know what's really gonna pop ultimately. Like everybody's got theories and thoughts and testing, and also I feel like our game, it's weird where like you have a lot of people who will just live or die, like Mirage Galgamon, right? Mirage Galgamon was supposed to be the blue savior, the the undefeated champion of Digimon, and it wasn't. And I don't think it ever will get that chance because they just hit, I mean, yes, a Mirage Galgamon, and we're about to get trainings, but like it's just so weird watching certain things from our community for Digimon in particular, and like how people can really stand a certain deck and say it's gonna get all these things because of Japan, and then it just Bandai does something and it doesn't, or people just don't care about it for whatever reason and it just doesn't catch fire. It's just so weird.
Yeah, I think I want to touch on a point that you made about like the whole like you get like this set, but then you're already kind of looking at the future one. Something I've kind of had an issue with, and I get that it's just going to be a thing, but this is my unbroken record of like talking about Bandai's like release schedule with sets is when you have a set that it's like out for so long, players get bored, right? So what do they start doing? They start proxying the next one. So by the time that set comes out, we've already been playing it for weeks, technically, right? Not in any official capacity, but online locals, play testing, whatever. Like people have been playing BT14, I think now for like 3 or 4 weeks now, right? Because the card pool's been out, they know what's here, proxied, whatever. and you've been playing it. So when this set comes out, it's like, okay, I actually have the real cards, but I've been playing it already. So like, what's the, so that's why then people will start looking at EXO5, and then this kind of like cyclical thing happens that it just over and over, and it's like it kind of takes away the excitement of like getting new cards or going to a pre-release and getting the things that, oh man, I've been looking forward to this and I've got it now, I can actually play it. No, I've already been playing it. You don't see that, at least for me, you don't really see that all too often in Pokemon, at least for me. Like, I haven't seen that, only because mostly your online client is usually what people play, and they don't proxy anything on there, so you can't get new stuff. Some people will do like, certain things, whatever, but Pokemon is very good about not doing these kind of month ahead of time releases, so yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for me, and that's why like I used to do it when I was playing Digimon heavily, is I would just proxy stuff and try to, but like this new stuff, I've got decks built on DigiDev and whatever. I'm not proxying nothing. I want my first time to play it be either pre-release or like release time, and actually get like the full effect of like the set being released. And I feel like if we kind of migrate back towards that, this whole like us versus Japan and like these weird release that all that kind of stuff would go away. I think us as players, we do it a lot to ourselves, personally.
No, I think you're fully right with that. There's this weird thing about, like having everything at our fingertips. Like the caveat I can give, which is interesting, is like we live in, I think, too fast an age now for technology or anything, because even a full North American game like Magic the Gathering, a pre-release is no longer going in blind and getting cards. It is the whole set is out, and I know everything that is being released. I don't know, like I know it's a Commander deck exclusive. I know it's in regular decks. I know it's like available. I can't hit any of the Jurassic Park cards or like whatever it is for draft packs. That's still strange to me, because we really no longer live in a time where you can play blind. Like there's always going to be information. Sure, Japan starts it because they have micro sets and they do smaller things and smaller releases. But I think that's unfortunately like a necessary evil. Like I think we're stuck there unless you choose to be ignorant and like not read ahead. And at the same time, the only benefit we might have from this, besides like potentially getting played from time to time, is it does feel like it's easier to wade some markets. When you have a set that's confirmed coming out and you're like, cool, like I know everything that's coming out right now in EXO5. I know that 100%. 15, I think we have everything at 15 confirmed. That's cool. We pretty much follow, at least for them, set to set, we follow card for card. It's only the weird promos and stuff that we're like get introduced at random. So I feel like it's one of those things where I can smartly invest my money in certain things where I know, like I'm like, oh, I feel like this Gabumon stuff's about to pop off. I'm already invested in Gabu, and I know to be invested for Gabu for 15, and I know to be invested in Gabu for 5 and then 15. Then cool, like I have a plan. Whether or not my pulls come out that way or like my single hunting goes the way it does, I think we're always going to have information. We no longer have the liberty of being blind, especially because like it's hard to convince people to buy product when they don't know what they're getting necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. You say that is that like this is the first time where I haven't built like 3 or 4 different decks for BT14 before the sets come out, and that's literally because I've been playing another card game. And I honestly think that like maybe for me, like that's what I have to do to not be so focused on like the next set of like just balance my games a little better. Because when y'all remember when Digimon was out, like that was literally the only game I was playing. And I would look ahead a set and a half practically and try and figure out like how to build stuff and all of that. And like, yeah, I think it isn't like a necessary evil. It's just like an interesting like thought experiment, right? Of like, what would the game be like if it was aligned, or I guess if we were in Japan, if the games were aligned, of like where there is no barrier and everybody's kind of experiencing it at the same time, and like you don't really have the ability to look ahead and figure in craft decks or perfect decks, whatever, by set 15. Because right now you could basically be playing as if you're playing in that meta and have like what you may describe as the perfect deck. When other players get there, they don't know shit about what's going on. So it's just an interesting experience, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's the just going like Farley was saying, kind of just going through it in a worse way of putting, like ignorant of it, and just kind of like being like, because I'm with you, dude. Is like I just started now building BT14 decks on DigiDev in this like last week, largely attributed because I've just been playing another card game. But it's like, again, I'm like, oh, like I probably should start looking into this stuff. And the more I look into it, I get excited about it. But it's, again, I haven't really looked into this set. I haven't looked into, whatever. And I think being able to do that and just kind of go into it, quote unquote, blind and not really looking, past that. But again, you could probably attribute that to like, I'm not a super competitive player. And I know people that want to be competitive, you kind of have to, because like, how do you keep track? So there's just like this whole like weird dynamic of like, where do you like categorize yourself of like, how deep do I get into it, or how do I just want to like just experience the novelty of it, right? And that's kind of where I'm at personally. It's just like I want to play a card game and be excited when a set comes out, and I can go. Fortunately, I have one. I know not everybody does, but I can go to my locals and like pick up packs off the shelf and be like, oh, I'm excited to open these. Not being like, well, I know this card's in here. I know that, you know what I mean? Like, so that's what kind of is like the positive experience for me. So
100%.
I think you can let it ruin it for you if you want to be competitive and you always want to be on top and you always want to be like grinding what's new. But at the same time, like there's a joy to the game, or like you can have, I wouldn't say a better mind about it, but like sometimes cards you don't know exist and then learning about is going to impact stuff way greater, or people underestimate strategies or things or synergies that are like not necessarily obvious. But yeah, like at the same time, people are still gonna lab those out a little bit and be like, "This is like my conspiracy theory about BT14. I got a plan. I got a plan. I have a plan already."
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think that like I'm more hyper cognizant after playing two different games, heavily, going from being a Digimon main to, I guess I would say I'm a Dragon, at least for this season, because I can't play in both events. We don't need to get into that. Thanks, Bandai. I want to give you more money, and you're telling me no. Like it's just different. It's different because, like, for example, with Dragon Ball, you don't know. You get one set ahead. That's all you get, and it's like you get it. You get what Bandai tells you, or when things leak, that's all you know, and you kind of have to build it out that way. And there are times where I wish that with Digimon, like we did that, just for the sake of like the community chatter, because sometimes I feel like there's I'm not saying like having a difference of opinion is bad, but like when I tell people all the time on stream, we're content creators, like we don't know the answers to everything, right? And just because I tell you that this Greymon deck is the way, it's the shit, it's gonna win you games, doesn't mean it's fact, because I feel like every set there's, ooh, go shine, ooh, play Mirage, ooh, and it's like there's so many people that are so hell-bent on these different decks that it's really hard to like stifle through like what is actually gonna bring me results as like a new player, right? Like I don't know, like I feel like with Digimon specifically, it's just the way information is transmitted. It's just interesting to watch play out in real time, which is why I also don't make a bunch of videos that are often like in that kind of vein, because I just don't think it's helpful for a new player, to me.
Well,
Our games are almost getting too fast. Oh, sorry, Dan.
No. I was actually kind of saying what you were just about, like what you were saying is like, I think that's a perfect point to make is when you have that too much information, you're never going to be pleased with what's currently in front of you. So like talking about Dragon Ball of like, yeah, it might be like, oh, well, you guys only get this, and it's like you only know one set. It's like I'm okay knowing one set ahead, because then I can stay in the present. I can say, okay, and then they aside from this most recent one got leaked, whatever, but like for the most part, it's like they show out these like, oh, today's like card reveal is this, and it's like, oh, it starts building up the hype, and then boom, the whole set release comes out, just shy of like the whole release date, and then we get that, and then we play it, and everything's cool. But it's like when you're constantly in a state of, yeah, I have this set now that just came out, but I already know what's coming out 2 or 3 sets down the road, you're already looking at building that stuff. You're not even focused on what's currently in front of you. And because of that, it's like, well, when I get that, I'll be happy. No, you won't, because you'll know the next 2 or 3 sets, and it's just going to continue over and over and over again. So until you break that cycle and just say, no, we're going to stop knowing that far ahead of time. Like we know, like you said, I think full of BT15, We've gotten leaks of 16 now with tricolor Digimon and all that, which, by the way, cool. I'm all for. But people are already starting to think, well, what am I going to do with Magnemon? You realize we're not going to get that until like almost this time next year?
You want to know something funny? I put up my Magnemons for sale, and like 8 of them went because of that reveal.
Right, and that deck is not even going to exist for like another 8 or 9 months. You know, so it's like that blows my mind that people are willing to do that just because. But again, whether it's directly from Bandai, whoever, like what, it's like this market manipulation, this overhyping of like this is why Digimon is having such a difficult time staying. I wouldn't say relevant, but people staying excited to play the game because it's basically like saying, hey, I've got the new iPhone, 15 or whatever. Yeah, but iPhone 16, 17, and 18 have just been announced. Well, when are we going to get them? The next 2 to 3 years. Well, then I don't. This phone sucks because I'm going to get. It's like that. It's that whole like revolving door of things, and it's like until you like prune that, it's going to just say. That's all we're going to do because people are programmed that way. You're always going to be looking for the next, the newer, the bigger, the better, right? Dragon Ball doesn't do that. Pokemon doesn't do that. I don't know about Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, but I would assume it's similar to that effect. And it's like, why do you think Digimon across those other games is having this like player retention problem? It's because you're exciting them for a format that's not going to exist for another half a year or longer. That's why.
I mean, planned obsolescence might be like going a little far with it, because like you can still use them. They don't run as service, but like they will never be as powerful as the next thing that's coming out.
Yes, yeah.
You make a great point. Like there has to be a level of like this card is really good for right now, but we always are going to print cards that are better. And maybe you were right with like you've got to kind of just be happy with where you're at the moment. Like with Dragon Ball potentially having a new card game, like is there a chance that Japan does that too, where all of a sudden there's the separation of like information, especially a couple sets or something like that? Or is this one that they plan to like potentially plan to launch together so that way they can try to maintain
I think that
balance a little more?
Fusion World is supposed to be a simultaneous release with Japan and the US. So, and that way when they do the digital client, it's like all the same globally.
Yep.
I assume there's probably gonna be some regions that don't have it just because that's just the way that distribution works. But I don't know if One Piece is simultaneous or if One Piece. I don't know. I
believe so.
I have no idea.
I don't believe so.
So I don't know if they're like how far ahead One Piece is compared to. But I know for Fusion World it's supposed to be simultaneous. We'll see how that goes. If that feels better, if it matters. I just think it's interesting, like just the conversations around the game and like the opinions that you can have as a creator and as like a player, competitive or otherwise, just based on like when you have some okay, so Symbiode, who was here earlier, me and Dan are trying to get into playing the game, and he's like, yeah, just send me decks and I'll just try stuff. And we're thinking about Ragna, right? And it came up literally because we know at some point there's supposed to be some Jogress Blast Ace thing that's supposed to happen. I don't know when it's supposed to happen, but it's like, here's a new deck. It's going to get better. I don't know when, but here's this thing. Learn to play it. It just makes it hard sometimes to figure out, like, how do I get my friend into this game and position them in a way where their cards are going to maintain value and they're going to have support going forward and feel confident in telling them, yes, you should try this thing because I think it will serve you past like tomorrow. It's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's just a problem that me and Dan have or that I just have. That's a meat issue that no one else has. But like, I feel like with this game, I think about that more than I do other games.
Oh no, 100%. And to that effect, it's like, I've got a play set of the starter Ragnas and like the older whatever BT3 Ragna, whatever it was from when Ragnazu or whatever, like years ago, right? And it's like same thing. I don't plan on offloading them. Why? Because we got that. I've got all of my Dioboro stuff. Dioboro Ace got revealed a while back or whatever. Nothing else. No other Dioboro support. But everybody's losing their minds because of Dioboro Ace, right? We
I
have
want
no
it to be
idea
good
when that.
so bad.
Right, same as me. You guys know I'm a Diaboro stan. I will play that deck into the ground. I will never let it go. But at the same time, it's like, when is it supposed to be good? When am I supposed to? Should I go? And it's like there was literally the day that Diaboro Ace got announced, not when it was going to be released, or not like the day that it was like, oh, it got leaked at Diaboro Ace or whatever. There was a buyout of the alt art Aradas, the Tamer. Why? You're not going to use that, and because here's the thing, Diaboro, not even borderline, it's completely unplayable right now. You cannot play it. It hasn't been playable. Like, you can't, barely in fun games, right? And I know this. Why would you go out and create a buyout of Aradas? Other than people doing the whole market manipulation, because now they control the market on the card, which, from a business standpoint is smart. But it's like, it's that overhype of a future unknown thing of saying someday, like Adrian was saying, someday down the line, it will be good. So we'll just invest in it now. But now you're sitting on these cards. What happens if it does? Because then it's like, well, what if the other support that they do, because they're going to release some other support for it, it's not just going to be the Ace card, right, is all trash. Now what? So that's the thing, is like, for me, it's like they get so caught up in all of these future releases that, like Magna, for instance, like you were saying, like, yeah, all the Magnas that have come out, they're good cards on their own, right? But are they like irrevocably broken right now? No. Will this tricolored Digimon with all the other supposed support that might come out make it? Maybe. We don't know. But people are going to lose their minds and immediately buy up all the Magnas they can because they think so. Because something was released one card, like, you know what I mean? And that I think is what's kind of turned me off a little bit of, like, I don't have the mental fortitude to be like, I want to look that far ahead and stay on those kind of things, because it's like, I just want to look for the next set, just the next one, know what's coming up, and be like, oh, this stuff got released, I'm excited for this. Let me work on getting that, rather than saying, oh, well, I probably should invest in this card, even though I'm not going to need it for 6 months because it's going to get bought out, and now I'm going to have to pay a premium because it was bought out 8 months before it was even playable. That's the thing that irks me as just a casual player, I should say.
I love that you say that, because Ragnarokdramon and Mastemon, the ace that is presumed to happen, is a sentence from Japan. Like, that's it. It just says, hey, the other one, which we're implying is Maste and Ragnar, are getting aces. Enjoy. And for that, Jawgrass aces, which we have no idea what that means in any capacity. At least Magna, we have text. I can read you the Magna secret text and tell you what it does. And a picture. Hell yeah. I got concept art. Like, you're right. There is this riding the wave and hoping that stuff keeps selling randomly, because it does seem like one big cycle, right? Like, we're restarting right now with the beginning kids again. We're going into 02 right after that because we just did a movie. It seems that Tamers is relegated to side sets so they can live there. That's fine. We'll look out for EX6, which will have more Renamon support. Maybe it'll be relevant. But I do see what you're saying, though. Like, to stay on the edge, like, I feel like every day I read a new Digimon card, and I think that keeps me motivated, but I can see how for other people that is too much. That is too much on the everyday of, like, I don't need this every day. Just give me when it's here. Or, like, waiting for Japan to release a whole set. And as much as I look ahead at sets and read cards ahead of time, I still feel like the second they're in front of me, I'm reading them for the first time. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. It's like things don't click fully. I was reading a Dear Boromon deck today, which ran BT12 Mamemon, because it sets a tamer, and people are just setting errata with it. And I'm like, man, people want to believe, and I also want to believe. but yeah, like, all we can do is live on the knife edge of, man, I got to read these cards and actually get them in my hand. But future looking, it can cause some FOMO of something that you want to be so good that never gets there. Agent talked about side decks like Examon. There's so many decks from side sets that don't live past the side set. That is like, how do you recommend it to someone? Or like, someone mentions a Digimon who hasn't had support in a little bit, and you're like, they might get there. Like, the amount of time I've had to tell, like, Diaboro's a good one. Piedmon was one I answered a lot. But people are like, man, is Piedmon gonna get good? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's hope. We'll sit here and wait for Japan.
Well, to your point about that, and again, I'm just going to say this exclusively to me, is you also, the other kind of environment that you create is this like I've said this already, is like this overhype, right? And I'll use Bloomlord as a perfect example. When Bloomlord got announced at whatever it was, BT 11, 12, whatever it was, right? People lost their minds. They're like, oh, this Bloomlord deck's gonna go crazy, da da da, and it flopped like immediately compared to what else was in the meta. It did what the deck intended to do, right? Like it did, but it didn't perform up and live up to those expectations. But because of how early on we knew about Bloomlord, it built up all this expectation and just didn't deliver. So that's the other thing for me too, is like, then what that does, and not even just for deck specific, what that does is it creates a detriment for people to just flat out play the game, because it's this thing you were looking so forward to that doesn't do what you wanted it to do, and it's like, well, man, now I'm kind of really disappointed. And it's like you put all this effort into like deck building and proxying and all this other stuff, and then it's like it doesn't. It's like, well, now what do I do? Now what do I look at? Oh, let me just look at the next future set. And like I said, it just creates this over and over cycle of like, I hope this thing that I'm hoping is going to be good is going to be good, and then if it isn't, now then what do I do? So I don't know. That's I know I have kind of a hot take on that. I'll probably get flamed for it, but that's just the way I look at it, as like in the trenches, blue collar Digimon player. Like that's what I'm seeing of like, I don't like looking too far ahead for that, because then it takes away from my enjoyment of the current like format.
I will say, I think with Digimon, it's like a weird thing where I feel like I tell people, well, I made a video about this a while ago, but like one of the key things with this game is you actually need to watch people play this fucking game. Like you need to watch content. Like it's not something like Lorcana or something else where I feel like you could go and pick up a deck and like look at cards online and like figure out what the hell you're supposed to do, and like it works for the most part. But I feel like with Digimon, it's like you need to watch content, you need to watch different streamers, not just one person, or at least maybe if it's one person that plays like a lot of different decks, sure, like that might be helpful, but like you need to just visit different like shrines of Digimon and see like what people say about the game and like what they like, what decks they do and don't like, because you can't rely on like Reddit posts where you're like, what's the best deck that I can play? And you'll see like all these different ideas about why this is the best, and then like for you, it just may not hit. It just falls on its face. And maybe that is more normal than I feel like it is. But I just feel like when I got into games, this makes me sound old as fuck, but like when I got into games outside of Digimon, like I feel like I didn't need to hunt down like people to watch and learn like the decks and then make a decision. Because like Dan, for example, when you got to playing, it took you like 6 months, maybe 3 to 6 months to like actually play, and that was from hanging out in the streams and like hopping around, and that's not like a bad thing. Like I think that it could build community. It's just interesting with this game where I feel like content creators, and this is kind of tangential, have way more control over community than I feel like I've seen in other games. And that's not, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I feel like I'm very cognizant of whenever I do any Digimon stuff, or people ask me about anything Digimon, of like, my opinion is my opinion. Like, I'm not telling you what is the most meta-defining thing, and that's just, I just don't do that, because I feel like any deck in this game can do stuff, but don't fall into the trap of other people's like copium. Like, just don't do that.
Yeah, because to that point, right, and I'm just going to be a broken record, is because there's so much projection on future stuff that you can't sit here and be like, my word. And I know you, like you said, you're really good at like making that disclaimer of like, hey, I'm going to give you my opinion and say what I think. But I have come across several, content creators or people that have put out there and be like, my word is like law, right? And like, this is good, and this is why this is good. This is why this is the best deck, and because this set's coming out, and then these cards are going to add to this, and it's like, bro, I'm not trying to like, I get it, and like, but I just want to see the deck work. I just want to like, can we go through? And it's like, but when you get like these deck profiles of like, well, I saw this, and then Japan's doing that, and it's like, I can't get roped up into that. And if I can give any advice to anybody who's like, whether you're new to the game or whatever, or just trying to figure out like where to go with it, it's like you said, like Agent said, don't fall into that trap. Just kind of like absorb like just gameplay and like what you kind of think, but you look too far ahead, you're never gonna get started, because it's information overload to me, honestly, at that point.
I also feel like you're saying with overhype, there's also like lesser hype when something is actually coming out because you know about the new.
Mm-hmm.
Where I've experienced it where like I feel like a lot of times I get to a set and I'm like I don't even know what I want to build here. Like I'm here to play and I'm here to do stuff, and you can fall into something and love it. But there has been times where I'm like, well, this box has said I'm playing these two boxes are saying I'm playing this, I'm playing this, and like you said, there's being able to accept with what you have, but like also having feeling like lackadaisic about being like, oh, these are new cards, I should be excited, but I know what's coming and I can kind of plan for the future. Yeah, it makes for an interesting dynamic because like your meta is always going to develop and get to a point, and as much as you can future proof stuff, I do feel like you were saying earlier, a lot of times I don't describe how good my deck is or like is my deck the best. A lot of times when people are asking me about decks, I'm describing what the deck does. Like, oh, I'm looking to float into other bodies. My plan is to like go aggressive and then like be able to recuperate and like still get it off on the back end. Or like my strategy is to wait in the back until I have perfect stack and then I can go for this like interesting move. Quite often you're describing more what the deck is looking to do rather than how the deck sits in like a tier 0 to tier 3 meta.
Yeah. But interesting random tangent. I feel like, but it's kind of, how it goes. But is there anything else you guys wanted to add about like blast dates? Anything cards that you're specifically excited for, not excited for, that sort of stuff? Because I think after that we can probably wrap for the day or for the month. I don't know, guys. Brain, dying already. If you couldn't hear it in my voice, the Florida got me sick. That's this. So,
man. He's not gonna put that on us, dude.
Got that gator.
No way.
So
man.
But yeah, any cards you looking for? Obviously for me it's Greymon stuff. So.
Big surprise.
No, I mean, it's a pretty one. Yeah.
Training boosts look really interesting. I feel like we were talking about new mechanics, and I feel like some stuff has still not clicked for me. I've removed Ace Digimon and forget that I got memory back. I've got Blast Digivolved on when I was like just swinging with my little rookie, so I didn't lose it first. And then like it does feel like new mechanics are kicking in, and like I gotta still get used to that. Even like looking at the memory boost, and I was trying to do it for Machine Dramon. I'm like, oh, like defensive training really works for Machine Dramon because I can hit my key pieces and I can be like, cool, like I really needed a Machine Dramon, go into that shit and then reduce the cost by 2, so it's like, oh, I go into Machine Dramon and then for free I go into Chaos Dramon and then for 2 I'm going into Chaos X Antibody. Enjoy. And that is also a deck I'm looking forward to getting more support in BT15. So the training memory boosts really look interesting. There's a part of me that wants to build the weird SBmon, Vadermon
thing.
the stupidest thing. I'm gonna build it for fun. Look forward to it on my Jank stream where I decide to tell you that it's good when it's not. Is there a card specifically? I'm a little annoyed that Agu Super Rare is just Agu promo but better and good. But at the same time, I get it. Like when people complain about power creep, that's one that annoys me where it's like this already existed and we just made it slightly better. That's my worst kind of power creep when things are like, well now they're like there's Digimon that can save or now there's Digimon that can Digicross. It's like there's always new shit, there's always new flavor, but like that one feels like the true power creep and they're just like, and we tacked this on. Enjoy.
Yeah.
It's got a new hat.
Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at the BT14 list now. So of course it goes without saying, same way, Greymon Stan, I'm, Angemon, Serafi. So of course I'm super hype on the yellow vaccine stuff. But one thing I'll make note of here, and it's another deck that I'm excited for. It's purple, is the Fenrir Lugumon, right? It's introducing a quote unquote mechanic. It's not really a mechanic, really. It's more of just its effect. But the fact that the turn does not pass until your opponent is at 3 or more memory. So you basically have effectively 12 memory to work with. You have your standard 10 and then +2, right? So what's interesting to me is, and I'm always looking for this in like set to set, is like what kind of new things are they like experimenting with? Whether it's a new mechanic, a new ability, new whatever. What are they kind of messing with? So for me, it's always like, what kind of doors can that open up, right? Playing on your opponent's turn. We're technically getting that with, and it kind of goes into that whole the whole genre of blast ace, hand counters, all that kind of stuff. So I'm seeing more of a migration towards that interactability between players on opposite turns, right? So obviously, we've got set 15, EX05, all that, but it's like down the line, it's like, will Digimon have more of that back and forth rather than saying, I'm gonna set up my board, I'm gonna do my thing, boom, now over to you, you kind of do your thing, you interact with my board, I can't really do anything with it, and then we just do it. So it's like being able to do that, it's kind of like, maybe they are kind of putting the feelers out to see, does it make it a game that like you can really play back and forth, which I like, because of the fact that Digimon does have a very high RNG factor to it. You kind of remove as much as you can of it by making the players actually play each other, rather than just like play themselves and basically like, well, I did all I could do. Hopefully you can't, blow it up too bad. So yeah, that's ultimately not any one card or things, just the future of it, I guess. The future implications, I think, is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back through it as well right now. Great preparation. Obviously the Agumon stuff. Metal Greymon Ace is. Why would you play this card? It's pretty, but like, so for those of you guys who don't know, obviously it's 4 play costs. So I guess that's maybe why you'd play it. I roll, but 8,000 DP. He's got the hand counter on play when digivolving. He pops something 6k or less. I don't think its value is. No, I don't know why you'd play this at all compared to all the other Metal Greymons. I'm really excited to just slap that motherfucker in a binder and just leave it in a binder. I just want a pretty alt art and it can just sit in a binder. That's all I want. Yeah, I think it's really just well, I will say the Commandramon stuff does look kind of cool.
Say, yeah.
I mean, maybe because Brigade Dramon and High Command Dramon are basic Greymons. Maybe that's why. But they look super dope. They look super dope, and like I'm tempted to try that out. But I will say the Lugramon stuff, the Purple Dog Boy, looks crazy. So and this isn't the set that includes Barrier. I think that's the next set, right? Where
Barrier already exists.
It is. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, which is so weird. I'm like, Dragon Ball terms? What's going on? Like same thing when they added Alliance. I was like, what? And it's the exact same card, effect, kind of, sorta. Though Barrier is really interesting for yellow. Being able to trash the security stack or card from the security stack instead of being deleted, like that's very yellow, and I'm curious to see how abusable that's gonna be with certain builds. It's just a cool idea.
It's honestly been so interesting just because, like, if you don't play anything if you play against Raid, it feels amazing. Oh my god, War Greymon, swing into me, do it. Oh, Raid, go for it, man. I don't care. Cool. Like, trash the security. It feels so good. Playing against a Beelzemon player who just has, like, Death Slinger. Like, you're back to basic yellow with no protection. I was like, for how many you're feeling yourself, you're like, I'm indestructible. This is amazing. And then someone's just like, cool, pay this, blow it up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, he dies.
Yeah, because I just noticed it is battle specific. Words are hard. It's battle specific. Yeah.
The Mind Link mechanics, though, you guys both touched on, both Commandramon, which I'm excited to play, and Fenrir Lugmon. The Mind Link mechanic looks really interesting too, especially because the fact that you're constantly playing it and like being able to remove it. It reminds me of Marcus, where it's like, cool, I come up, I'm a Digimon, I'm swinging, and then the second my turn ends, it's like, and I go to the back row.
Yeah,
I live back here in the safety zone.
Though I will say, I feel like the most busted card in this set is Zudomon Ace. I feel like this guy is gonna cause so many tears and anger. So for those of you guys who don't know what he does, he's a 4-drop as well, or 4 play cost. He's got the hand counter blast Digivolution effect. On play, when Digivolving, you trash 2 Digivolution cards from under your opponent's Digimon. Then you return one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards to the hand. That's going to just get so gross because if your opponent has an ace, I'll just get rid of that because you just pick. yeah, it's gross, and it doesn't have to be from the same Digimon. So you could be like, let me take that from your Wargray, and then let me take, if you like, if for some weird reason you got 2 aces on your board that are underneath, let me just snipe those and then gain a bunch of memory. Like, it's gonna be so nasty. It's gonna be so nasty, especially in like blue hybrid. I'm already seeing this and like kind of crying inside. Like, my poor baby Examon is gonna get pooped on yet again by the ability to say, yeah, I'll just take that. Yeah, it's gross.
I mean, the most busted card I thought was gonna be Bukamon, because I feel like everyone's already complaining about a baby, and the first baby to make it on the list is better be an awesome baby. Especially if you're gonna put me on the limited list, that's the what a blue baby we're running in everything.
Yeah, I forgot about that. The jamming. Yeah, that's gonna be it's gonna be lovely. I'm gonna be like, screw you, blue. Okay, I don't want to play against you anymore. IRQ. I'm out.
Well, like the Tokamon with yellow, the fact that it's like, because like was it Baumon, the purple one, right? Has to be specific, like specific traits, whatever. But like the same kind of thing for, blue plays into its mechanic with Digivolution sources and jamming and all that. This yellow egg, like yellow never really had a consistent draw, but because one of yellow's main mechanics is recovery, this is just whenever it's added. And what's crazy is you can like evolve rookie and then push out play TK, and that counts. So not only are you plussing a card from your security, but then you're plussing all that. So like there's a lot of easy ways, right, to like add cards to your security with with yellow effects. So I think Tokamon, same as Bukamon, is gonna be like almost like a staple yellow egg for most yellow decks. I would, I mean, shoot, you could argue running it in Marcus, because you're like, you can play, so like things like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm cool with the eggs here. I find it funny that like all three, well, no, the Koromon, I guess, also draws one, just on the opposite end when it's removed from a security stack, which again, red being aggro, same thing. It's like you're pretty much always going to be removing, and the difference between like the whole barrier thing, this is not specific to battle or trashing or whatever. So it's like if you like the Metal Greymon X, right, where it just unsuspends and trashes one, you would draw off of this. So yeah, it's kind of cool that like they're getting like better babies, I guess. So now you can really choose and do stuff with them.
Koromon feels like the biggest side grade, where it's like, oh, I'm Koromon. I have Greymon, I swing, I draw a card. This one's like, nah, take a security first. Check what that first thing is. Then you can get one.
Yeah.
Was it scary? No, you're alive. Cool. You may have one.
Well, what I think about that is, what I think is cool about this, right, is like the Koromon egg for Greymon decks, which is the majority of red, but is obviously arguably the best one in terms of like draw power consistency, right? But now red in general has just a good draw egg, because anything that's red that's not Greymon can consistently draw as long as it's taking security. So I think that's a pretty cool little feature that, again, it's not going to push them over the top, but it may give red a little bit, that's again not Greymon decks, a little bit of a boost to pump them over, because it's like, all right, cool, we now have a draw egg. So
yeah, that should be easy to proc, even if you're just like using, well, just a random thing, Volcanic Dramon, cool. You
could push out your rookie, swing rookie. I mean, literally,
as long as it survives. Well, no, it doesn't have to survive, right?
No,
because it would reveal first.
When a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, draw one. The battle is the thing that resolves after.
Yes.
So.
It's funny because Guri felt so easy to proc, be red in 6,000 and swing. But you're right, like this one, you can do it with rookies. Like a rookie can just take a straight, and you're getting that draw. And I guess technically you could even put this into like black Greymon builds now, because quite a few of them have that Koromon tax. So you're even giving a draw potentially to a black deck.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Like y'all can say something in the comments if I'm wrong. But I would think the order of effects is push out rookie, I swing. They have to remove it from security to reveal it. That right there triggers the effect. Then the deletion would happen. It's like, okay, yeah. So then that's pretty much an automatic rookie draw.
Yep.
Even if it dies. So I think that's going to be a universally really good just red egg.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Damn. I'm gonna be really thinking through my Greymon deck, which I'll probably start working on after we record. Finally.
Yeah, we'll have to get some games in.
Yeah. I haven't played in a minute. But speaking of, I think we can go ahead and wrap for today because I think we're almost like 2 hours for this episode. So for those of you guys who made it this far, thank you. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate the love and support. Soon, probably within the next 2 podcasts, our name will change to something else. I don't know what yet. We are workshopping titles. So ooh la la, it's a whole thing. And hopefully by next time, I won't sound like I'm dying. The curse of Florida will hopefully have left me by then. And yeah, appreciate you guys listening. Anybody have any additional closing remarks?
As always, thank you so much for having me. We have been doing call to action, so I will say if you have any comments you would like us to answer, please put that in the comments. And also put names if you have name suggestions, because that'd be hilarious. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I always appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate you two for putting up with me for almost 2 hours.
No, I echo the same thing. It's always a pleasure every time we get together on this month to month and kind of just go over this stuff, because honestly it's nice for me because I don't keep current on things, so this is kind of like my reimmersion of like, okay, yeah, we're still doing this, we're doing, so it's like it kind of keeps my want to stay in the game and do all that, keep that high. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it. Yeah, I mean, feel free. I'll be the one. Just flame me in the comments. Perfectly fine. I'm sure I said a ton of wrong things, but I stand by them. So.
Oh, that confidence. I love it, Dan. I love it. And we will see you guys. Y'all just noticed my cat just chilling here, grooming himself, having a nice little bath. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and call it for this month, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.